1.3 Supreme Court verdict on Article 370 abrogation. Context: the Supreme Court (SC) Constitution Bench led by CJI pronounced its verdict on petitions challenging the abrogation of Article 370 and bifurcation of the erstwhile state of Jammu and Kashmir into two union territories. More on news. Z. Key aspect of decision. The SC upheld the government's decision to suspend Article 370 and ordered that the Parliament hold elections in the Assembly by 30th September next year. Vertical bar. The bench also affirmed Ladakh's reorganization as a union territory. Z. Validity of presidential order. The court also held the validity of the Constitution, application to Jammu and Kashmir, Order 2019 for the abrogation of Article 370. About Article 370. Z. Article 370 of the Constitution gave special status to Jammu and Kashmir in the Indian Union. Z. It restricted the centre's legislative powers with respect to the state and gave the state legislature to make its own laws in all matters except for finance, defence, foreign affairs, and communications. Article 35 of the Indian Constitution. Z. Presidential order. It was introduced through a presidential order in 1954 to continue the old provisions of the territory regulations. Z. Permanent resident of state. It empowered the Jammu and Kashmir state legislature to define permanent residents. Z. Prohibit outsider. It forbade outsiders from permanently settling, buying land, holding local government jobs, or winning education scholarships. Z. Gender discriminatory. It also barred female residents of Jammu and Kashmir from property rights if they married a person from outside the erstwhile state. 5. Abrogation of 370. Z. Passing of presidential orders. To Presidential Orders Co. The Constitution, application to Jammu and Kashmir, Order 272 and 273 by invoking Article 370(3) were passed on August 5 and 6, 2019 respectively. Z. Co. 272 Order. It superseded the Constitution, application to Jammu and Kashmir, Order 1954 and declared that all the provisions of the Constitution of India would apply to J&K. Z. Amendment to Article 367. It introduced a clause to Article 367 which stated that the expression Constituent Assembly of the State, referred in Clause 2 of Article 370, should be read as the Legislative Assembly of the State. Vertical bar. Change in recommending body. This changed the recommending body from the Constituent Assembly to the Legislative Assembly. Vertical bar. Redefining government. Co. 272 introduced further clauses in Article 367 to state that reference to the government of J&K can be considered as the governor of J&K. Following this, the Parliament passed a statutory resolution recommending the abrogation of Article 370. Z. Co. 273 Order. The President issued Co. 273 under Article 370(3), according to which all clauses of Article 370 would cease to be operative from 6 August 2019, thus revoking the special status of Jammu and Kashmir. Legal issue before SC. Z. Whether Article 370 is temporary or has gained permanent stature in the Constitution. Z. Whether Parliament's move to amend Article 370 in 2019 and give the words Constituent Assembly of Jammu and Kashmir a new meaning as Legislative Assembly of Jammu and Kashmir is constitutionally valid. Z. Whether the entire Constitution of India could be made applicable to Jammu and Kashmir by using Article 370 itself. Z. Whether the Centre's 2019 actions are permissible without a recommendation of the Constituent Assembly of Jammu and Kashmir. Z. Whether the imposition of the President's rule in Jammu and Kashmir and the dissolution of the Jammu and Kashmir Assembly subsequently is constitutionally valid. Z. Whether the reorganization of Jammu and Kashmir is constitutionally valid without the consultation of the state. Z. Whether the President's actions on behalf of the J&K legislature are constitutionally valid. Supreme Court Judgment. Z. On the sovereignty of Jammu and Kashmir, the court ruled that J&K did not retain any sovereignty after accession to India in 1947. Vertical bar. Despite the erstwhile ruler's proclamation, subsequent proclamations affirmed integration, akin to other princely states. Z. Status of Art 370 as temporary or permanent. The SC held that Article 370 as a temporary, transitional provision based on historical context and its placement in Part 21 of the Constitution. Vertical bar. The provision was adopted because of the special circumstances in the state, which was experiencing war conditions. Z. Legality of the abrogation of Article 370. SC upheld both presidential proclamations of August 2019. Z. Impact on legislative power of State Assembly. The State Assembly's power wasn't affected by the dissolution of the Constituent Assembly. Vertical bar. The temporary right of the Assembly to suggest changes no longer exists, but the President's authority under Article 370(3) remains unchanged. Article 1 of the Constitution of India. It provides that India is a union of states. Z. Article 1 references Part 3 states, and Jammu and Kashmir was listed as a Part 3 state before 2019 in the first schedule to the Constitution of India. Section 3 of the Constitution of Jammu and Kashmir. It declared that Jammu and Kashmir is an integral part of India. Z. Relationship of the state with the Union of India under Section 3. The state of Jammu and Kashmir shall be an integral part of the Union of India. Z. Section 147 of the J&K Constitution. It prohibited any amendment to Section 3. Differences between a Constituent Assembly and a Legislative Assembly. Z. A Constituent Assembly was tasked with framing a constitution to exercise constituent power. Z. The power to amend a constitution was a derived constituent power. Since the Legislative Assembly was not entrusted with the same, it could not be equated to the Constituent Assembly. Article 370(3) gave the President the power to declare that Article 370 shall cease to operate. Z. Under this provision, a recommendation of the J&K Constituent Assembly was necessary for the President to issue such a declaration. However, the state's Constituent Assembly was dissolved in 1957. 6. Z. Legality of actions taken under the President's rule. Vertical bar. Ruling in S.R. Bommai v. Union of India. The SC cited the ruling from 1994, which declared the parameters of declaring presidential rule, and a judgment from a smaller 9-judge bench, Bommai, is binding on a 5-judge bench. Vertical bar. Rationale of actions. Citing the Bommai ruling, the court held that the President's action could be deemed lawful if it is not a mala fide or an irrational act. Z. Struck down amendment using Article 367. The court struck down the measure of using Article 367 of the Constitution for amending to change J&K's Constituent Assembly into Legislative Assembly. Criticism of SC judgment. Z. Threat to federalism. The powers of the Union government vis-à-vis the states seem to be enhanced by the verdict, which could be politically unstable given the ongoing conflicts between the appointed governor and the elected executive in states ranging from West Bengal to Tamil Nadu. Z. Concerns of parliamentary sovereignty. There are concerns that the Union can impose the President's rule first and then substitute parliamentary approval in place of the Assembly even for highly divisive issues like the splitting of a state. Conclusion. Though the SC upheld the abrogation of Article 370, its direction of the restoration of the statehood of J&K and early conduct of assembly elections recognizes the supremacy of the democratic political system. 1.
Evolution of SC stand on Article 370. Premnath Kaul vs Union of India 1959. SC held that all presidential orders are subject to the approval of the Constituent Assembly. Puran Lal Lakhanpal vs the President of India 1962. SC held that the President has wide powers to amend constitutional provisions in Jammu and Kashmir. Sampath Prakash vs State of Jammu and Kashmir 1968. SC held that Article 370 is a permanent feature of the Constitution. Makbul Damnu vs State of Jammu and Kashmir 1972. The President issued an order to modify Article 367. State Bank of India vs Santosh Gupta 2016. SC held that Article 370 will cease to operate only after the recommendation of the Constituent Assembly.